Welcome to the Power of Genesis. I'm Reverend Eunice Chalfant of the Agape Global Heart Community in Centerville, and it's my joy to present Reverend Dr. Will Coleman, who's now visiting us. Dr. Coleman has so much to share with us this evening, so let's begin. Welcome to Dayton.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, glad to have this experience, and I'm looking forward to this conversation we're going to have together.
Well, why don't we start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you came to feel so passionate about the Bible?
Well, I grew up in an environment where the Bible was used quite often as a child. Grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and the Bible was a part of my rhythm of life with my family, extended family, church group, etc. Then I went on to college there in Memphis, and I majored in religion. From there, I went to the Decatur, Atlanta area. Did my Master's of Divinity degree in theology, and then from there to the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, where I did my PhD in systematic and philosophical theology. But during that entire time, I was also very interested in Bible knowledge and Bible scholarship. So more recently, I began to relearn Hebrew and Greek that I'd had in seminary and to probe the depths of what I call biblical spirituality.
Wow, what do you mean by biblical spirituality? I've not heard that term before.
It's a term that I like to use to describe the ways in which the biblical text is a dynamic, interactive resource for spiritual insight, for cultivating spiritual disciplines, especially when you learn how to read and meditate with the Bible, not only in the English translations or the English versions, but with some knowledge of the power of the original Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek languages. Then a whole other world opens up in terms of the ways in which you can explore self-realization with this text as a resource. That's not just one level of meaning, but it has multiple levels of meaning, especially in those original languages and sounds and symbols. And it has almost become a mission for me to make this type of knowledge available to more people who in the past have not had this kind of knowledge, because we haven't always had the resources for reading and understanding the Bible, and more than just the English translations and versions.
Mm-hmm. So is there a difference between versions and translation?
Yes, it seems almost too obvious, but if the average person would look at the back cover of their Bible, they would see it says King James Version or New Revised Version. Well, if it's saying that, then it means that there's something else, because the version is always really, in some sense, a counterpart to something that is original. So the question becomes, what is the original? And as we learn more about the history of the Bible and the history of the English translations, sure enough, we discovered that originally it was written in Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, then translated into Latin, German, French, and all the languages that we now know, and then most recently, believe it or not, into English. So when we say original, we mean going back as far as we can to those original, as I said, sounds and symbols and narratives that are in the text and that are very exciting, in addition to what we know the English stories. And again, such a powerful resource for meditating on the inner meaning of those stories becomes available to us.
Well, is there a vast difference between the English translations and going back to the original Hebrew or Aramaic in terms of not so much the content, but the context of what it is trying to convey? Are there a lot of differences?
That's just one example.
Yeah.
Let's take the very opening words to Genesis. Yeah. First of all, Genesis means from the Greek word to generate or to bring something into manifestation. The opening words of Genesis in English are, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We all know that. But actually in the Hebrew, it has a different nuance. I just say it so you can hear it. It actually says, Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashemayim ve'et haaretz. Now, you say, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. But the point is, the Hebrew is actually saying that it's not just in the beginning, but it's in beginning. So beginning can be plural. And also, the symbolism of the Hebrew alphabet connote that this is something that happens in consciousness. And it can happen more than once. Now that's when it becomes dynamic. When you say that something is happening in consciousness, Bereshit, that has more flavor and more depth than just the prepositional phrase in the beginning. And you can't get that only from the English. You really have to get into the nuances and sense of what the Hebrew is saying. So yes, it is very different. It sounds different, and it also connotes something very different. It doesn't mean you have to learn Hebrew per se, but being aware of it really adds depth and power to how you interact now with the text and also with reality. If you know it's happening all the time.
It sounds to me like there's the nuance to me, what I'm hearing you say is that the process of beginning is an infinitely unfolding process as opposed to something that was nothing and then started something.
That's right. It's not just one specific moment in time way back then. It could be that. But it's also an ongoing process. Anytime that we begin a new activity, we have a new insight, we are having a better sheet moment. And this is where so many persons who are involved, for example, in what may be called Kabbalah meditation, are able to permeate the meanings and get inspiration, not just from what happened in the past, but what is happening right now, and also understand how we are co-creators. This is very important. We are co-creators at any time we choose to participate in co-creative power. And the power is in understanding, again, the nuances of the language and the symbols that resonate in the very words themselves, not in the beginning, but better sheet. And then in the beginning, or in consciousness, the strong ones, not just God, but the strong one who's able to make things happen, shaped and formed all of reality. And that shaping and forming, very much like Eastern thought, is not something in the distant past and not something in the distant future, but something that's here now and available here now. When you can meditate on that, then you are empowered to be like the powerful one.
So how does that relate to mental creation that we hear about?
Several layers. First of all, the text itself is a product of mental creation. Even if one believes that it has been inspired by a divine being or creative being, God, whatever we may choose to call that being, it nevertheless has come and has been channeled through human consciousness and then inscribed into a text on clay or on stone. So the mental creation is also an ongoing process. The person who has been inspired to write the text is participating in mental creation. They are creating a narrative and a story that can inspire others.
So how do we use this information to anchor a greater awareness of our power of creation?
Well, again, in Genesis, there's a passage around verse 26 and 27 of the first chapter where it says, let us make the human being in the image of, we get it in the English, in the image of God, male and female, and that they would have these various powers. Again, in the Hebrew it says, let us make the human being Tezelim Elohim. That means as an imprint of the powerful ones. Well, if you appropriate that, that means that you're no longer a victim in reality. That you have within you, almost like a DNA. That's probably why the word is called Genesis now. Like a DNA imprint to participate in changing any situation that seems to be negative by changing your thought patterns and knowing that you are in the image of the same intelligence that made all of the stars, all the galaxies, everything that we see, even those things that we don't see. And this is really true. Everything that we are now experiencing in the studio has originated from inside of someone's mind because they thought differently about the possibilities and not the limitations. That's really...
Everything was first a thought.
Everything.
And
there's
then...
nothing excluded.
Yes.